So a few years ago, I did a 3-spoke steering wheel in my truck. These are really popular with the MK4 Supra crowd. They came on later Supras. It's the one in gray and black here. I actually had this was done by Redline Goods. I had a custom stitching pattern done on this. Probably won't get the best view of it, but basically, so I was on a whole reggae dancehall binge at the time, and so I went with the Ethiopian flag colors, right, Rasta style, and I just thought it would be different, pop. It definitely was. Now unfortunately I didn't take very good care of the steering wheel, so the leather got into bad shape. I did clean it, but I was too rough in cleaning it, so I actually wore through it. This is actually still salvageable. If I wanted to, I could wash this, you know, treat the damaged areas and make it look brand new. Now, I intended to wrap the second one that I got in just a black leather and sell it, and then wrap mine in Alcantara. Now, unfortunately, the other one came from the factory without any upholstery on it. It was not leather wrapped from the factory. Okay. So the padding on it is as thick as it would be if it were wrapped in leather. The other one is actually a narrower wheel, which reaches the same thickness by being wrapped in leather. So the leather that I ordered, I made the mistake of not letting Redline Goods know that. So the new leather I got does not fit that black rim, but it will fit this one I have on the left. So I'm going to go ahead and upholster that one in the black leather, and when the suede arrives, I'll keep that one. And it's also a nice swap because that one has the cruise control stock on the steering wheel, which this one doesn't have. I currently have it on the column, but I can probably run the wiring and hook it up to this. And if I can't, then I'll just swap the backs and transfer the cruise control stock from one wheel to the other, which is not hard to do, by the way. It's just screwed on there. But anywho, I'm going to go ahead and start wrapping this, and I'll show you guys the process. So the first part of the swap is to take off the backing. So this backing is actually just held on by a couple screws here and here. I'll go ahead and take those out now. That will give you access to the leather back here. These are the bolts that hold the airbag on. Make sure not to lose those. This plastic backing can just go somewhere over there. So let's get to work, shall we? I need to cut all this stitching. I'm going to make sure to take it off in one piece in case later I decide that I want to clean this up, restore it, and restitch it onto another wheel. I'll have the option to do that. I'll just have to buy new string. Alright, so I'm going to go ahead and take an X-Acto knife, and I'll just carefully cut out the yellow stitching, which is what is uniting the leather on there, and then I'll take this thing off. Alright, that's one cut. And now I'll just go through the rather boring process of unwrapping this. And I'm not going to film this because obviously it's not going to be of much value. You just keep going like this over and over until this is out all the way. You could also go around cutting it out, but I'd rather not risk cutting into the leather and damaging it. Alright, I got the old leather wrap off the steering wheel. Now it's time to put the new one on. So I'm just going to, this requires a little bit of effort because if this fits right, it fits tight. So you need to make sure you adjust this properly before you slide it on, or else it won't fit in the right positioning. Luckily I've got the marks from where the previous leather sat, so I can kind of align it there. And it's pretty much dead on dimension wise. They've obviously used the same pattern. So now I can go ahead and wrap tape around these points, and then I can force the rest of this on there gradually without damaging it. I'll take some masking tape, and I'm not going to wrap it with the adhesive side down, but rather I'll wrap it backward. So it's only really adhering to itself and not the leather, because I don't want to damage my leather. I'll wrap tape around it really quickly.
just to kind of hold it in position there. All right, the tape is there on that side. I'll do the same exact thing on the opposite end. So I'm gonna keep working around this and just adjusting it until I get it to sit how I want it to sit. It's pretty much there, but it still needs a little bit of work. Now that I've got the center spoke placed kind of where I want to, I'm going to go ahead and apply some contact cement just in this general area to help hold this down. It's the same thing that I did with the previous wrap. You don't want to overdo it here, just want a small amount. So I'm going to let this drip a little bit back into the can. Now apply a little bit. Spread out here, here, and here. Now I'll let that sit for a sec till it sort of tacks up. That way it doesn't soak through the leather. Now I'll apply the leather to it, kind of push it down in the position that I want it to be in. That'll just help to hold this down in place. Right, and I'll start my stitching from here and work my way across. Now, when you're going to thread this, you don't want to take a needle, attach all this string, and then try to thread it. Every single stitch you're going to have to run this entire massive length of string through. It's going to take you forever. The trick is really to have just enough to do this. Now, you're probably thinking, how do I know that? Well, in order for you to have just enough, what I tend to do is I'll take and measure this with the string, right? All the way across. And then I'll get double that amount. Right? So this is about, there's double, and then I leave myself like 5-6 inches extra. That is more than enough to do what I need to do. Now, another thing I'm going to do is I'm going to tie some knots into the end of this. Now, I've already got a knot in the end of this, but I'll add to the size of it by looping it through. Alright, I'm going to go ahead and thread this needle. I'll just tie a very simple knot in here. Alright, just like that. Unfortunately, if this were all the knot that you use, it wouldn't tie as you're doing your stitching work. So you have to actually knot it through properly. This is yet another reason why you want to have more than just double the length, right? Because you're going to consume some of the length of string tying up your needle. Now it will be fairly hard to run this end through the leather itself, but you'll be able to do it, and then the remaining stitches will just be string going under string, so it won't be as hard to deal with. But this first one is usually a little bit difficult. So I'm going to come in through the back. All right, I'm going to sort of poke here, the top of this first stitch. Alright, let's get back to stitching. I've been stitching for a while now, and unfortunately I'm getting a very poor result. The shape is not visible, and this is very loose. And the reason for that is they left way too much material past this stitch. This length should be about half of that. If you look at my old leather, you can see that there's a much shorter distance between where the stitches are placed and where the leather ends. I need to go ahead and cut this to match that. Otherwise, I'm going to keep having an issue where there's too much extra material and it's tucking into itself, and I'll always have a loose feeling, crappy steering wheel. It's also not aligning well here. So I'm going to go ahead and do that. But unfortunately, it does mean I have to undo all the stitching and the cement that I did here. And that's just life, unfortunately. But I had to stitch this much in order to see what was really happening and realize what the problem was. So you win some, you lose some, but I've learned something new. Now I know what to look for with that, so I'm gonna go ahead and unstitch this as I did with my other one, and I'll cut it and then I'll get back to this. So I ended up having to unstitch this entire thing yesterday, and what I did was I kind of went around this area and cut material off this edge because I had about double this amount of material past the stitch. By doing that, I'll have less in the middle, so when I do the stitching, this will meet nicely in the center instead of folding over the way it was doing, which was causing the stitches to become concealed. Now, the distance between the stitch on this side and the opposite side, I feel is still a little too much, or rather, I feel like these stitches should have been further apart, but it should give me a much nicer fit now with the cut done. So I'm gonna go ahead and try that. All right, let's start this thing up. So coming through the back as always. Come out here, then go around to the other side. I've stitched up one of the 3 sections of the steering wheel. You can see that here. It's already looking pretty nice. I'm very happy with how the stitching came out on this as well. It's really hard to capture on the camera properly, but it's coming along nicely. The next step I'm going to do is stitch the other lower section. Then I'm going to attack the top, and I think I'm going to start from the middle and stitch over this way, and then again from the middle and stitch over that way, just so I can tug the excess leather in that direction and then out this way. But I'm not 100% certain if that's what I'm going to do. I may very well just start stitching in this corner and go all the way around and come back out this corner, which is what I did last time I did this. But we'll see as I go along. Now, when you first do this, it's going to feel like you have some extra leather and some of it's going to be pretty loose. That's fairly normal. The leather will contract over time and get tighter. So when you first put it on, it may be just a little loose, just a little puffy. It's nothing to worry about. My previous one did that too, and then over time it shrinks. Same thing, you'll see like some of these wrinkles will disappear as it tightens down from the heat in the car. So at this point I started doing some stitching going this way. I have this clamp holding it down because I'm going to take a break, and while I'm on that break, just giving my hands a chance to rest, I'm going to go ahead and trim these corners. Then I'm going to glue this down flat here. So let's take the scissors. We'll just cut this at an angle. Do the same thing on the opposite side. And careful to avoid your stitching. Alright. We'll do pretty much the same on the back side, but it's not as necessary here. I'll just go ahead and cut this little corner. This one kind of tucks nicely, so I don't have to mess with it. Now, all this is going to go into the airbag. The back gets tucked in by the rear plastic that I took off in the beginning. So I'm not too concerned with that. For right now, I'm just going to get this part done. So we'll very quickly take some of our contact cement here. Be very careful not to drip this on the outside of the wheel, because once you do, it's ruined. Alright. Let's take this. Just very lightly rub some of that on the inside. We'll give it a second or two to tack up. You can blow on it if you want. Try not to breathe too much of this though. Not good for you in the slightest. Alright. That should be about ready. I don't want it to soak through basically. Not too big of a deal with leather. Bigger deal with Alcantara or perforated leather also. But still, want to make sure you let that stuff dry. It's just good practice. Alright, now we'll press this down. And this just guarantees that this will sit down nicely under the airbag. You can see that sort of semi-hexagonal shape that I have here. It's going to let the airbag sit down real nice on this. So at this point I've gotten the entire lower rim completely stitched. Now it's time to go do the long stitch all the way around the top. Just like before, I made a knot at the end of the string, stuck it in from the back, wrapped it around to the other side, through, out again, through, out again. Right, and now I'm gonna go through one stitch over to the next, then back, over and over, zigzagging back and forth. And I'm going to do that all the way around this time to the opposite side of the steering wheel, and then this process is going to be mainly done, at least the stitching portion. Beyond that, there's going to be some work with lifting these up and just adding a little contact cement, but I'm also going to tuck these down, cut the corners, and glue them down so that this does not end up sticking out, and I'll be done with this process. stitched part way up the rim. My hands are really tired from this process. Heart goes out to all of you who do this for a living. It is not fun on the hands, it is not kind. So right now, all I'm gonna do is focus on this area. I'm gonna go ahead and cut the excess leather and then also glue it down so that it sits nice and flush. I think the first thing I'll do is, since this has to sit down this way, I'll probably make a cut here, apply the glue, glue that down, and then cut the excess here and glue the end down that way. So let's cut this little excess tuft here. And I'll bend it over this piece. I'll go ahead and apply glue to this entire surface. Got some time to tack up. That's that, and as soon as I'm done resting my hands, I'll go back to stitching. Struggling a little bit there. All right. There it goes. So at this point I've stitched all the way around and the leather wrapping is really done. I have to say that although it probably looks good on the camera, I'm not very happy with the quality of this particular leather wrap. Specifically, the rows of stitching on either side of the wrap were far too close to the edge and at different distances in some places. So unfortunately there's no consistency in the appearance of the stitch. So the appearance of the stitch across this spoke is completely different from the appearance on this one, where it's much thinner. and other inconsistencies like that bother me a lot. Feels nice. I mean, once it's in the car, you probably won't really notice for the most part. So I'm not too happy with this. We'll see how the suede or Alcantara one comes out when that finally arrives, because they've also taken forever to get that done. Not too happy with them right now in general, but oh well. Let's go ahead and put this thing back together, shall we? Hopefully once it's all assembled, it looks good enough that I can get over my current levels of disappointment. So let's put on the back cover. This just takes 2 screws. Alright, that's that. Let's toss the airbag on. I won't put in the bolts for the airbag until after this is installed, because you need to be able to put the center nut on once you slide this over the steering shaft splines. You also obviously need to make the airbag connection. But that's that for now. If you've enjoyed this video and you'd like to see more like it, feel free to like and subscribe. Click the notification bell so that you're notified when I post another video. If you have any feedback or ways that I can improve upon this, feel free to leave that in the comments. And as always, thank you for watching.